Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to have a look at another collaboration beer. So this one is half German on the home side, half Norwegian on the away side. Quite an unusual combination actually when it comes to the reviews I've done on the channel before, but both of these breweries have featured on the channel a couple of times before, albeit the Norwegian brewery far more frequently than the German one. But I've had some really nice beers from both of them. This is a style of beer that I know they can both do very well, and I have actually tried this beer before at the German brewery's brew pub, so it's going to be nice to do a proper kind of sit down review of this one. So I'm very curious to see if it's any different to what I remember it being in the pub actually. So hopefully it's as good as I remember, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. Let's see what we have here. So for the home side of things then, we are going to head down to Berlin, the German capital. We are going to go to the Schöneberg area, which is kind of in the sort of central southwestern part of the city, and we're going to have a look at another beer from BRÅ. So this particular beer is called the Rosinen Bomber. It comes in at 12% ABV, and this one is an Imperial Stout. So this is brewed in collaboration with Lervig Aktiebryggeri, who come from Stavanger up in Norway, and yeah, they've featured on the channel many times before. They are very well known for their Imperial Stouts. But yeah, I tried this beer when I visited BRÅ a couple of, was it 1 or 2 months ago now, I forget. But yeah, we tried this beer actually on tap in the BRÅ brew pub, and if you want to have a little look at that, you can go and check out my out and about video and you'll see what the place looks like. But it was pretty cool to go and visit there actually. But yeah, this one, a 12% Imperial Stout, rum Imperial Stout as they're describing it, brewed at BRÅ in Berlin in collaboration with Lervig Aktiebryggeri from Stavanger up in Norway. So this beer was released as part of the Tillfälligt temporary assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden, and I can't remember exactly when it was released. I think it might have been about a month ago now or so, so that's maybe kind of sometime in the middle of April. But I went to Hansa, where I usually go in Malmö to pick it up, and yeah, there wasn't any left, so I had to go down to Emporia. Then the next week when I went in for my regular trip to Hansa, there was a bunch of them there. So yeah, a little bit of an experience getting a hold of this beer. But let's crack on with it then and see how we go. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the breweries involved here before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from BRÅ and from Lervig Aktiebryggeri before, and you will hopefully see more added to both of those lists at some point in the very near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the German beers that I've reviewed for you, and another one for all the Norwegian beers. This beer will appear in both of those because it is dual nationality. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then, to tell you a little bit about BRÅ first off then. So BRÅ, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Berlin, the German capital, and the company was founded by 3 friends back in 2014. So this is Katharina Kurz, Christian Lase and Michael Lebke, who were studying together at university. So Katharina apparently discovered craft beer during her time over in the US, while Christian was introduced to beer by his father, who used to enjoy going on beer tours and exploring lots of different breweries. And both of these two had actually worked in the digital business world before they got involved in the brewery side of things. But Michael had, however, trained in brewing and malting by the age of 16 apparently, and then he went on to study further at VLB and the Technical University of Berlin. So originally BRÅ were operating as a gypsy brewery up until around 2016, so they didn't have their own facility as such. They were brewing in various different places around the city, but these days they have their own brewery, which is known as Brewhaus, and it's located right in the middle of Schöneberg, Kreuzberg and Tiergarten, and this opens to the public back in 2017. But there they have a 20 hectolitre Braucon brew system installed, and the building is made from 38 old shipping containers, and it's also got a restaurant as well. If you want a proper look at it, you can go and have a look at my Out and About playlist, and you will find a video that I filmed there at BRWO. It was really cool actually. But since 2019, they've also had an outpost at the KaDeWe department store in the west of Berlin, and that serves chicken, if I remember rightly. And I think they brew 1 or 2 little beers on a small scale out there actually. So they call it like a second, like a little brew pub, I guess you could say. And they talk about how they use sustainable chicken farming and stuff to basically get the food for the restaurant. So if you have a little look at the brewery website, it will tell you a wee bit more about that. But the name BRWO, it comes from the old Slavic word for Berlin. That's the old name for it. And as of May 2022, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 140 different kinds of beer, according to Untappd. But yeah, that is all I can tell you about BRWO for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, as always, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that they've done. So yeah, let's go on and have a little look at Lervig Aktiebryggeri then, up to Norway for this. So Lervig Aktiebryggeri, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Stavanger in the southwest of Norway, and the company was founded back in 2003 after the Toll brewery was sold to Carlsberg, and then production of that brewery was subsequently moved down to Oslo. But for a while, these beers were produced at the Mackville brewery in Tromsø, up away in the north of Norway. However, production was moved to Hillevåg in Stavanger back in 2005. So the head brewer for Lervig is Mike Murphy, and he's been there since 2010. But prior to this, the brewery were making just many kind of different light lager beers, and it was Mike that really put them on the path to producing the more American style craft beers, and they've never looked back. So Mike played quite an important role in the Danish craft beer revolution, if we can call it that, and they collaborated with several renowned brewers in the early days, such as Mikael of Mikkeller and Jeppe of Evil Twin, Sean Hill of Hill Farmstead, and also Andreas Kiesmeyer as well, who's quite well known throughout Denmark. But he also worked for a period of time for Birra del Borgo in Italy, and he now owns 5% of Lervig Aktiebryggeri, so he's been there for quite a wee while. But the CEO of the company is Anders Kleistrup, and he is the main owner of the brewery. Was originally, before him, Christopher Stensrud, and he owned 67% of the shares. But in 2018, Orkita Capital, who also own part of Mikkeller, bought 50% of the company, and they're helping them to expand further. But they are apparently hoping to open up a new facility called Ulhallen at some point in Stavanger soon. I'm not sure if that has kind of fully finished up yet, because a lot of things were obviously delayed during the whole COVID-19 pandemic. But yeah, I do need to go up to Norway at some point and visit some places. So yeah, Stavanger would definitely be one of the ones that I would be keen to go and take a look at, and if we get the chance, we'll go and try some Lervig beers. That would be pretty awesome. But Lervig, of course, export around 1/3 of their beer, and in total the brewery now exports around 15% or so of all of the beer that's exported from Norway. So if you're interested in Norwegian craft beer, Lervig Aktiebryggeri are one of the ones that you are most likely to come across. But as of May 2022, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 250 different kinds of beer, according to Untappd, and like I say, they are one of the best known Norwegian breweries these days. And I think they're doing a lot of different IPAs and also Imperial Stouts, so depending on where you are, I think it's more likely that you'll come across some of the Imperial Stouts. But yeah, one of my favourite beers from these guys was the 3 Bean Stout. I thought that was pretty awesome actually. But yeah, that is all I can really tell you about Lervig Aktiebryggeri for the moment. If you want to learn a wee bit more about these guys, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's crack on and have a little look at the beer itself. So as we mentioned earlier, this one is a 12% Imperial Stout. It says it's a rum Imperial Stout, so I'm not 100% sure if it is barrel aged, because it doesn't mention anything about that on the Untappd page. But yeah, it obviously says it on the bottle. But on the back here, it says it's inspired by the iconic C-47 candy bomber plane next to our brewery. The Rosinen Bomber delivers a payload of dark chocolate, vanilla, dried fruit and cocoa nibs, guaranteed to evoke a childlike joy in those lucky enough to catch its treats. So yeah, maybe that was something. Maybe the Rosinen Bomber. I remember the Berlin airlift, and was that because that was when the Soviets basically tried to they laid siege to West Berlin, hoping to take it from the British and the Americans and stuff like that. And then there was the Great Berlin airlift to basically, they were dropping food and things for the Berliners. So yeah, maybe the C-47. I never actually saw that when I was at the brewery, so I need to keep an eye out for that when I go back to Berlin in a couple of weeks. But yeah, maybe that's where that C-47 plane comes from actually. But there you can see on the top of the bottle there is the BRÅ thing there, so you can see it has like the Polish L, so that's like a wo kind of sound. But yeah, it looks pretty nice. You can see, I wonder if the red star is maybe some kind of reference to the sort of communist era in Berlin. So yeah, kind of interesting. But yeah, certainly nicely presented, this one. You can see down on the bottom of the beer here too, there is the BRÅ symbol and the Lervig Aktiebryggeri star. It's probably the star of Lervig actually, come to think of it, rather than being a reference to the communist era. But just whenever you see a red star, you think communism, But yeah, this one is a 330ml bottle, and if memory serves me correctly, I think I paid 50 Swedish kroner for this one. If it had been brewed in Norway, I think you would have paid you probably would have paid closer to 100 kroner for it. But German beer is remarkably cheap for what it is, even when you get the more kind of crafty American type things like this. So, as I say, I think this beer cost me about 50 Swedish kroner, so that's about €5, somewhere in the region of like, £4.50 sterling, maybe about $6.50 American at today's exchange rate. So I'm filming this review for you incidentally on in the kind of middle of May 2022. But yeah, 330ml. Let's crack this guy open and we'll get on with the tasting then. The Rosinen Bomber, a 12% Imperial Stout from BRÅ in Schöneberg in Berlin, and Lervig Aktiebryggeri in Stavanger in Norway. So yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Yes, this looks pretty damn good. Yeah, let me just put that down so that my OCD is happy. There we go. Yep. So anyway, this is poured pretty much as you would expect from an Imperial Stout. So you can see, if we put a finger next to it, the head on this beer is about a half finger frothy. I would say kind of fawn colour actually. It's sort of a light beige if you like, but there are one or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there, but the head just seems to be fading away to be a very kind of thin foamy layer. In terms of colour, it's pretty much as you would expect. It's that kind of typical dark ebony rosewood colour that looks very, very nice. But yeah, I think it looks good. If we put the light through this beer, it does have a little bit of that kind of Coca-Cola, Pepsi coloured edge to it. It's actually quite a clear looking Imperial Stout, this one. But it says on the side it is only, it says corn malt in Swedish. So that means it's an only barley malt beer, this one. There's no oats or wheat in it. So that might be an explanation as to why we can see through this one a little bit. So this is maybe a kind of clear stout, if we can call it such. But yeah, it certainly looks very, very nice, I have to say. I do like what this one has to say for itself. But yeah, other than that, I don't think there's anything else to say about the appearance of this one. A lovely dark ebony rosewood colour. Remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar is caramelised, thus you get a darker colour of beer. Quite often Imperial Stouts and barley wines, these big beastly beers, have a slightly longer wort boil. But any barrel aging that you do or any adjuncts that you put into the beer can affect the colour of it. But when it comes to like black beers like this, like the Imperial Stouts, it's a bit difficult to notice that, to be honest with you. It's a bit more prominent in, doppelbock, Scotch ales, barley wines, quadruples maybe as well. These more kind of brown sugary coloured beers, yeah, lighter, these kind of things affect lighter beers a little bit more. But yeah, other than that, nothing to say about the appearance. So let's have a look at the aroma then and see how we get on with this one. Oh yeah, that does smell very, very nice actually. Yeah, I've got a feeling this one is just like an old school Imperial Stout. These days there are so many like pastry stouts and stuff out there. Pastry stouts, I'm not as big a fan of them as I am the old school Russian Imperial Stouts and Imperial Milk Stouts and stuff like this. Yeah, but this one I've got a feeling this is a more kind of old school thing. And one of the things that I love about German brewed Imperial Stouts and German brewed American style craft beer, if we can call it that in general, is that the malt is just so distinctive. German malt just has this really smooth and bright breadiness to it, and you can smell that out of this beer right away. So yeah, first impression of this one as an Imperial Stout, it's got a lovely smoothness to it, there's a good degree of sweetness, and you've also got that kind of big bready character too. There's a little bit of a fruity note to it, and you can pick out one or two of the wee hoppy characters, but for me, it's a distinctively German smelling Imperial Stout. And as I say, for me, German brewed American style craft beer is very distinctive because of the malty character. I love German malt bases, so to me this comes across as quite a bready Imperial Stout. Not quite as roasty and toasty as some of the old school RISs that we've had before, or at least in the past, from Lervig Aktiebryggeri. But yeah, this one smells too. It smells like it's a kind of medium length wort boil rather than being, a big 7-8 hour thing that you might get from Lervig. So keep that in mind. But yeah, let's have a look at the aroma a little bit more in depth and just describe it for you. So let's do this. Yeah, this is interesting. I would be curious to know whether this is rum barrel aged. When they're calling it a rum Imperial Stout, I think it could well be. But yeah, the backbone of this one, I can see why they would call it a rum Imperial Stout anyway, because you do get this lovely kind of smooth woody backbone to it, that nice oaky sort of thing. There's a wee bit of vanilla in there. You get these kind of bright rum like brown sugars for sure, and they've just got a wee touch of dryness to them. You get that, it's like a nice gold rum, a 7-year or a 9-year rum, something like that. You are getting a wee bit of that in the backbone. One or two little nutty elements in there as well for sure, but you can smell that nice backbone to the beer. On top of that though, you do get that distinctive German kind of breadiness to this one. So definitely a bit of that, that kind of rye bready, brown bready bread crust. On top of that, there's a wee bit of, as we say, on top of that, there's a little bit of a more kind of fluffy brown bread kind of thing. So I really appreciate how that goes together. Yeah, lovely kind of fluffy brown bready character. This one, wee bit of bread crust. I do think it goes about its business very, very nicely in that sense. So yeah, you're getting the lovely kind of what I do suspect this one is barrel aged. You do get a little bit of that kind of rummy barrel age underneath it. Then you start to get the kind of brown bready notes. Interestingly, I don't get so much in the way of roasty toasty black malts out of this beer. So that is most definitely worth pointing out. Yeah, this is interesting for sure. Yeah, aroma wise, this beer certainly has kind of caught my interest actually. Yeah. So where do we start? Where do we start with that then? As I say, I really don't get. Yeah, I don't get so much in the way of a roasty toasty black malt out of this. There is a bit of a kind of rye bready bread crust, some smooth and sweet brown bready notes in there. I can smell a little bit of a sort of cocoa nib dryness to this one, so there is definitely chocolate. It's like a 70%. It's like a 70%ish cocoa chocolate that you get out of this beer, so I do quite like that. Yeah, about 70%ish cocoa chocolate, and then there's quite a bit of brown sugar to this one. It's actually got quite a nice wee bit of sweetness to it. So for me, you get this big oily caramelly note out of it, and the brown sugar that you get in this beer really does lean toward the sweet side of the spectrum. You do get a little bit of that heavier treacle molasses quality out of this one, but yeah, it's quite interesting how everything in this beer just kind of pushes together actually. Yeah, aroma wise, it's pretty damn solid, I have to say, so it gets a thumbs up. It does get a thumbs up from me. Yeah, I like it. I certainly do like that malty side of the aroma. Other than that, I don't think there's too much to say on the malty barrel aging side of things. On the hoppy side of this beer, you know, there's a little, if it is barrel aged, you know, obviously you'd expect most of the green component of the hops to be gone, and I think that's another thing that's pushing me in the direction that it is barrel aged. I don't know why they wouldn't say something about that on the bottle though, that's the weird thing. But yeah, in the back of the nose, you do get little hints of earthiness. There's a little hint of floral character and a wee bit of a grassiness. So I do quite like how that goes together in this particular beer. So that is worth saying with this one. But I think it comes across as very smooth in that regard. So I think, yeah, it is barrel aged. But yeah, on the fruity side of things, it's kind of what you'd expect. There's a wee bit of raisin in there. You know, you've got some nice oily plums and a good bit of blackberry and blackcurrant as well. So yeah, I do like how all of that goes together in this beer. It comes across really, really nicely, this one. It's actually, and you can smell when you sugar the beer up, you can smell the level of booziness in this one at 12%. It's not the heaviest Imperial Stout I've ever come across, but for a German one, in the way that I know these beers tend to be, I think this is going to be a little bit of a beast actually. So as I always say, take a wee bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it, but I think it's about time that we taste this one. So yeah, this is the Rosinen Bomber, a 12% Imperial Stout from BRÅ in Schöneberg in Berlin, and Lervig Aktiebryggeri from Stavanger in Norway. Let's get stuck into this one. Slange, skål, cheers, prost. Oh yeah, that's nice. I'm going to say with this, first impression of it is, it's a lot more roasty and toasty than the aroma would have you believe, but it is kind of as light as I remember it being. It is kind of as light as I remember it being when I was at BRÅ actually. Although it did feel a wee bit thicker there, probably because it was straight out the tap and things. I always find bottle conditioned beers feel a little bit lighter than when you get them straight out of the tap, so that's worth noting as well. Yeah, this is pretty damn solid, I have to say. I like how this I do like how this goes together. It's a big thumbs up from me, but yeah, it's definitely, this does lean more towards the kind of roasty toasty side of things, and that's one of the main differences from in the flavour in comparison to the aroma. This beer does have a little bit more of that roasty toasty backbone to it, so keep that in mind with this. But yeah, lovely beer actually. I do like how this one goes about its business in that regard. Yeah, let's start breaking this down for you then and describing it. I'm pretty sure from the flavour of this, it is barrel aged as well, because it's got a really smooth backbone. So middle third of the palate, you can feel the base. You can feel the base of that beer. It's got a lovely smooth kind of woody backbone to it, so you get that lovely smooth oaky note out of it. So yeah, lovely smooth oaky woody sort of thing for sure. Yeah, with it on top of that, you can feel there is a little bit of that rum kind of sugary sort of thing, and then toward the front of that middle third of the palate, there's a wee bit of vanilla and a wee bit of a nutty character, but then on top of that, you get these really roasty toasty, well-fired, grainy back. You get that really roasty toasty, well-fired, grainy backbone to this beer, so that's worth pointing out as well. Yeah, I do like, as I say, I do really like how this beer goes about its business from that perspective. So yeah, on top of the kind of rum barrel sugars, you do get this roasty, toasty, well-fired, bread crusty backbone. But then on top of that, you can feel the bready layer kind of mellows out a wee bit the further up in the flavour that you go. So you start to get like a little bit of a rye bread crusty sort of thing, and then a sweeter brown bread note. A sweeter brown bread note coming out of this beer, so that works as well. So yeah, a little bit of a bread, yeah, as I say, bread crusty sort of thing, sweeter rye bread, And yeah, I think that's the backbone of it. You've got the barrel aged side of things, the roasty toasty black malt, the kind of rye bread crust, and then on top of that there's a wee bit more of that kind of brown wholemeal bready sort of thing. So yeah, the way that goes together gets a thumbs up from me. I do quite like that for sure. But yeah, on top of that, you start to get the other things out of this beer. So toward the back of that middle third of the palate, you start to feel the kind of cocoa nibs coming out of this one. So you can feel that nice kind of cocoa nibby, dry chocolatey sort of thing. And the chocolate in this one is quite a high percentage cocoa, you know, maybe an 80-90% cocoa, because you can feel that little bit of red fruity character coming out of it. But as you move further forward, you start to get the brown sugars. And you can tell with this beer, I don't think this has had a very long wort boil, to be honest with you, because the brown sugars are not all that leathery. They're actually kind of oily and slick to a degree. So you can feel that the base layer of the brown sugar, you get a little bit of that kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing, and that comes out, you know, toward the extremities of that middle circle in the palate. But on top of that, there's a sweet caramel, and in the dead centre of the palate, you get a little touch of that treacly molasses sort of thing, and that'll be where the alcohol is kind of concentrating with this one. But yeah, as you move forward toward the front of that middle third of the palate, you get a little bit of, you do get a little bit of a more nutty note out of this one. So yeah, the way that this goes together, I think, works really, really well. It does. It's you know, you can tell straight away with this one, because of the breadiness and the kind of lightness of it, it's most definitely a German brewed. You know, you can tell that straight away with it. It really is a German brewed Imperial Stout. This one is nowhere near as kind of thick as some of the ones that you're going to find from Lervig, and I don't think it's not got anywhere near the length of the wort boil of some of the ones that you would get from Lervig, right enough. But yeah, it is really nicely done. This is more of like an old school Russian Imperial Stout. The rum barrel aging is there, but it does very much take a back seat, and that's the most complex part of the beer in that middle third of the palate. But let's have a look at the back third now, and then we'll look at the sides and the front third of the palate. So yeah, back third of the palate then. Base of the beer is kind of, again, you get the drier side of the wood for sure. Then on top of that, there's a little bit of again, the roasty toasty black malty sort of thing, and that feels a little bit more bitter. Remember, the more bitter dry flavours come out toward the back of the palate. The other ones come out, the kind of sweeter, smoother flavours come out a little bit further forward. Then on top of that, you get a nice, you do get a nice more kind of brown bready sort of thing out of the beer. So absolutely, you get that. And the brown bread, of course, is a wee bit more grainy, but then on top of everything, that's when you get the yeasty note. And the yeasty character for me is a slightly more dense brown bready note with a bit of a kind of more bread crusty kind of vibe around the other side of it. So yeah, I do like how this one goes together actually from that perspective. So yeah, the back third of the palate with this beer is distinctly more kind of bready and kind of fluffier in a sense, but it's also a bit more bitter. So on the back third of the palate, you can feel the flavour is a little bit taller, but then as you come further forward into the middle third of the palate, the flavours just kind of squash down together a wee bit more. But yeah, I like how that. I do like how all of that goes together in this particular beer. It's a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, other than that, I don't think we need to say anything about the malty yeasty component of the beer. So hoppy side of things then, the back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness in there. As you move further forward, you start to get a little bit of you do get a little bit of a kind of herbal character, but then beyond that, you don't get so much. You do get a little teeny remnant of floral character on the front corners of the palate, and a little bit of a lighter grassy sort of thing around the front curve of the tongue. But yeah, as we say, if this one is barrel aged, which I think it could be, most of the hoppy character will have dropped out of this beer. So yeah, that's definitely worth pointing out with this one. Yeah, I don't think we have anything else we need to say about the green component of this, so let's focus on that front third of the palate then. The border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of a bready, bread crusty build up there. The base of the front third of the palate is a little bit more kind of smooth, and you still get some of the kind of woody notes there on a wee bit of the brown bread. So yeah. yeah, the way that that goes together, I think is pretty nice. Yeah, so wee bit of wood, wee bit of bread crust and things like that. Then a little bit of yeah, just fruity character on top, so you get that nice oily bubble where the fruity juicy esters roll their way out of the beer. So let's focus on the fruity side of things then to round off the tasting. So yeah, the fruity side of this beer, I should point out as well, is kind of quite wet. But yeah, on the back half of the front third of the palate, you get a little bit of raisiny sharpness at the top, then underneath that, it actually becomes quite figgy. The fruits in this beer are not all that oily, which is interesting. Again, this is one of the whole vibes about this beer. We'll come to the mouthfeel in a minute, of course, but it's really quite a light and kind of clean Imperial Stout for sure. But yeah, a little bit of raisin at the top there, then underneath it gets kind of figgy. But as you move further forward into the front half of that front third of the palate, the beer gets distinctly more kind of black curranty, and then it's a wee bit more kind of like oily and blackberry like as you reach the kind of front tip of your tongue. So overall, the way that this goes together is very, very nice. Yeah, quite a straightforward Imperial Stout, this one, in a lot of ways. And it reminds me of something, you know, I've had quite a few. I've tried some of the German beers from the very early days of the American style craft beers in Germany, and this one kind of takes me back to those. It's a very, you know, it feels like a very old school beer, this one, and it does have that kind of distinctive German breadiness to it. And I've always found that the German brewed American style beers have that, and I like it. I do like the German malt side of things. But yeah, other than that, I don't think there's too much to say. I don't think there's anything else really we need to say about the flavour of this beer, like an old school Imperial Stout, and it gets my approval for sure. Let's round off this one with a wee quick look at the mouthfeel. So mouthfeel wise, I think this one, it's remarkably light for an Imperial Stout, especially when you consider the alcohol in this one. That'll be due to the barrel aging, because you always, I'm pretty certain with this one, there's barrel aging in it, because you get more, the more you drink of this, the more and more woodiness and kind of rummy sugars you get out of the beer. But yeah, you can feel that this one, it's got a very light mouthfeel for the style, so I would describe it as being mid-bodied, right in the middle of the spectrum. The carbonation is very smooth. It's got a wee bit of slickness to it, but again, it feels kind of quite clean at the same time. When it comes to IBUs, I think this is like a 70-80 IBU beer. So yeah, you do get a bit of bitterness from the black malt and from the kind of hoppy remnants of the beer too, so there's definitely some of that. There's a wee bit of dryness from the barrel aging as well. The malt base has a wee touch of sweetness to it, but not overly much. It's definitely an old school Russian Imperial Stout, can we say. I would say it fits into that style category quite nicely. Then the fruitiness is just kind of nice, light and wet as well. So I really like, I do really quite like how this one goes together. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this beer. This one's been quite interesting. So yeah, this one is the Rosinen Bomber, a 12% Russian Imperial Stout, I would say, from BRÅ in Berlin, and Lervig Aktiebryggeri from Stavanger up in Norway. Really interesting to try this one again, and I'm just surprised at how light this beer actually is in the bottle. It was a wee bit thicker on tap at BRWO's in Berlin. But yeah, enjoyed this one. So I hope that you guys have enjoyed my take on this beer as well. So yeah, let's leave it at that. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are, both from BRWO and from Lervig as well. I'm sure we'll return to these guys at some point in the near future. But thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out the brewery social media, and I'll see you guys in another review soon. So yeah, this was the Rosinen Bomber from BRWO in Schöneberg, Berlin, and Lervig Aktiebryggeri from Stavanger up in Norway. Until the next time, slange, skål, cheers, see you guys very soon.